I like playing an online game called CSGO. Usually my profile picture is a character from a movie or TV show, and my username is very generic. You would never think I was a girl based on my picture or name because I don't seek that attention. One night, I was playing deathmatch with my internet best friend, Derek, at an ungodly hour. We were just chatting about life and morals over voice chat in the lobby. There were about 7 people on the server, and everyone was chiming in with their thoughts on the conversation. It was pleasant, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Everyone was respectful, which is rare in this game. One player didn't have a microphone and only communicated through chat. He told Derek and me, "I've never wanted to be friends with someone on this game so badly. Will you guys add me? I promise I'll have a mic tomorrow." I was feeling lonely back then, so I accepted his friend request. His name was Corey. Derek and I played CS death matches every night, talking about all sorts of things. For 4 days straight, Corey would join us without an invitation. We found it odd since he had mentioned being strict with himself about sticking to a schedule and focusing on school, so we never invited him. Ironically, Corey became upset that we didn't invite him to the games, even though he had told us he was focused on school and we only played late at night. At some point, Corey got the impression that Derek and I were dating, even though Derek talked about his girlfriend almost every day. I sarcastically told Corey, "Yes, we're obviously dating because a guy and a girl can never be just friends." I tried to make my voice as flat and bland as possible, but Corey didn't pick up on the sarcasm and ran with the idea that Derek and I were dating. Immediately, Corey started trying to win Derek over by gifting him in-game items like case keys and skins worth real money. Every time he gave Derek something, he would say, "You better be treating her right or you'll pay for it." Derek, being a nice guy who avoids confrontation, never replied to those messages. Instead, he would just tell me about them. After 2 days of receiving these gifts, I told Corey during a death match, "You know I was being sarcastic when you asked if Derek and I were dating, right? Derek has a girlfriend and she doesn't play video games." Corey's voice instantly became calmer and he didn't stop saying, "Oh, thank God, thank you, Lord Almighty. You have blessed my life, thank you." Random players told him to stop talking and that he was being creepy. I didn't talk to Corey for a while after that because, even though we were just online, I felt an awkward connection with him. The next day, on day 7 of knowing Corey, he asked me to join him in a private game. I have immense anxiety about being alone with people no matter the situation, so I politely declined his offer. Corey then tried to call me over voice chat and I got a nervous, uncomfortable feeling. Something felt off about the random call request. When I checked his profile, I saw he had completely transformed it to look like a 2008 emo MySpace account. He changed his picture from Harambe to rain on a window, and his bio from "I inject memes for Harambe" to "My life is meaningless without her." It was one of the most bizarre things I had ever seen unfold over a video game. He explained that he wanted to play a private game with me so he could plan a meetup to grab coffee. He knew I lived in Seattle because I had mentioned running into the Seattle superhero a while back. But that was just the beginning of the creepy things Corey said to me. At one point he said, "Your voice makes me trust you." That made my skin crawl. During one match in front of everyone, he asked, "Is your body as smooth as your voice? You sound like a goddess on cake." I almost vomited. Some other weird things he said include, "You make me want to snuggle up in bed and fall asleep in a cutesy tone," or tee-hee out loud instead of laughing. Whenever he said something creepy, I would just ignore it or awkwardly say, "Thanks, my dude." It felt like he practiced those lines for hours and they came out so unnatural. I knew Corey didn't talk to any other females because he told me so. He said, "Girls in real life just find me creepy, and whenever I approach them, they ignore me, something I should have seen as a red flag." One day, he sent a call request that I ignored. I messaged him asking, "What's up, everything okay?" He replied, "Not even close." I didn't know how to respond, so I waited for him to send another message. 10 minutes passed, and he spammed me with personal questions. "What kind of guys are you into? Do you only date tall, skinny men? Do you care about what other people think?" I felt guilty and obliged to give him honest answers. I told him I care about looks to an extent. As long as someone takes care of themselves, I don't care what they look like. I don't really have a type. I just want a healthy-looking guy regardless of height. Why do you ask? Corey then described what he looked like and sent me 10 photos. I never asked for pictures of him, it hadn't even crossed my mind. He asked if he was attractive, too skinny, too short, or if he had good hair. I told him, "You look nice." He was very skinny, of average height, and appeared to take care of himself. A normal-looking guy. He replied, "Thanks, you're so sweet. Such a lovely girl." I didn't respond and just launched CS to play with Derek. We played deathmatch and had our usual conversations. We even chatted with a complete stranger. In the middle of this, Corey joined the game. He didn't say anything, but I noticed I had missed several messages from him asking, "Do you find this guy attractive? Does he sound hot? Is he funnier than me?" I ignored the messages and kept playing. I didn't want to deal with it. Corey noticed I was ignoring him and confronted me in front of everyone saying, "Why aren't you replying to me on Steam?" I told him I don't have notifications on. I'm too busy playing to hold a conversation. Corey then went on a rant saying, "I thought we were friends. Why would you ignore me? Friends don't ignore each other." I didn't respond. This was all over voice chat so everyone could hear. I was clearly uncomfortable, and a random player told Corey, "You're being kind of creepy, dude. She clearly doesn't want to respond to your weird messages." Corey screamed at the top of his lungs, "Go off yourself, you useless human being. You don't know her like I do," and then promptly left. Derek and I continued playing, ignoring our messages. After an hour, we got off the game and I opened my messages. Corey had sent me a roller coaster of emotions ranging from, "I'm so sorry," I screamed, "you didn't need to hear that side of me," to "How dare you ignore me?" I replied, "You're taking this friendship too fast. You should calm down and take a break. The deepest thing I know about you is your name and your favorite meme." He replied, "You're right. Good night." I hoped that would be the end of it, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The next day, I woke up to my Steam app being spammed by Corey saying, "I need you, I'm at the hospital." A few things stood out to me. He was on Steam via a web browser which shows a browser icon next to your name. However, Corey claimed to be using his phone, which would have shown a mobile icon. I knew he didn't have a phone because he told me he broke it last month when he threw it against a wall. I didn't mention any of this to Corey, but I figured he was lying. I asked him why he was at the hospital, and he responded, "I don't know, I was puking blood all night and my parents brought me here, I'm scared." Even though I suspected he was lying, I let it go and assured him, "You'll be fine, I'm sure of it." He quickly replied, "My parents are talking with the doctor and they're crying. I don't know what's going on." I asked, "Why aren't you in there with them?" He said he was about to enter the room but was stopped by security who told him, "We don't think you're ready for the news yet. Have a seat." Again, I didn't question his story and told him, "It won't help to worry about things you can't control." He then spammed me with broken messages riddled with spelling errors. I understood that people cry in stressful situations, but Corey had previously told me, I've been hurt so badly I can't even cry. I didn't cry when my brother died. Yet he was typing perfectly fine before and after that message. I ignored my doubts again. Suddenly, he claimed the doctor had told him he had stage 4 skin cancer. I responded, "Didn't you just get to the hospital a few hours ago?" He replies, "Yes, it's stage 4 skin cancer." I didn't let him know I thought he was lying and was currently laughing. I messaged Derek about the situation and didn't reply to Corey for roughly 10 minutes. I opened Corey's messages back up to find him explaining to me how he got his skin cancer. He apparently got it from a mole on his chest that he cut off because it was in the way, and it got infected with cancer. I didn't think this lie could get any worse, so I confessed to him I know he is lying. I express how disgusting it is to lie about having cancer and that my adopted mother died of cancer herself. He rushes his response to, "Oh my God, I had no idea, I'm so sorry. The reason I lied to you was because I am actually sick, but with something else. I actually have type 1 diabetes. I lied because I didn't want you to think I was fat." I ask him if he remembers sending me pictures of himself, and he said he remembers, but he was worried I still thought he was fat. He probably weighed at most 120 pounds. I cut off contact with this guy on everything the same day. Roughly 6 months after deleting Corey, I run into him in real life. I knew it was him because his voice was unique and distinct. Corey never saw what I looked like. I never sent him pictures or posted a selfie on my Instagram. I knew it was Corey, and he looked the same as he did in those photos. This was during Seattle's street fair, but I never thought I would run into this guy. I'm glad he didn't recognize me. I have no idea what I would have done if he did. I recently received a friend request that reminded me of this story, so I'm going to share it here. This happened after I went to university, so I was 18. I made an effort to make friends after I moved onto campus and ended up with a few groups to hang out with, including a new girlfriend and plenty of people from my classes that I liked well enough. There was one class before lunch where it was traditional for people to go to the cafeteria afterward to eat in pairs or threes. I wasn't very discerning about who I'd have lunch with because I got on fine with most people from the class, and we were all trying to make an effort to be social. So when one girl, Lily, asked if I wanted to eat lunch together after that class, I didn't have any reason not to go. We talked about school and that kind of thing. Nothing noteworthy, but she did ask me to get lunch with her again the next week. It became a pattern, and there wasn't exactly a way to start saying no suddenly. It was fine, but it did mean I lost the chance to eat lunch with anyone else on those days. In hindsight, I suppose that was the point. One day in class, I asked someone if I could add them on social media. This happened in front of Lily. I saw her face jerk toward me from a couple of seats over. It was such a sharp reaction that it was hard to ignore, and I still remember it. By the time I got home later that day, Lily had sent me a friend request, no friends in common. I don't know how she knew my last name. I was a bit surprised, but I guessed she'd just dug through the university's social media pages and found me through there. It gave me a bad feeling, but surely it was fine. She ended up messaging me a lot and commenting on anything I posted. I told myself that she was just awkward and we became friends, if not close. I'd known worse people. She still always got me to go eat lunch with her after our one shared class. Other than that, we rarely spent time together in person. I saw her around sometimes, but I never went out of my way to hang out with her. So it was mostly online messaging and seeing each other in group settings. Coincidentally, my girlfriend was also called Lily. This was something that clearly bothered Lily, not my girlfriend who couldn't have found it less interesting. It's a common name. She occasionally hinted that she wanted my girlfriend to pick a different name, or joked about her not suiting it. She clearly didn't like my girlfriend at all, and I had an idea why. It was hard to ignore by this point. Lily was starting to unsubtly hint that she had a crush on me. I tried not to address it because what was I going to say? I've never known what to do when a friend makes a pass at me. I was also not interested in the least. Even ignoring the weird stuff she pulled, Lily was not my type at all. She tended to dress and act in a way somewhere between a 50s housewife and one of those adults who is still obsessed with Disney princesses, if you can picture that. Things took an uncomfortable turn on the day of our last shared class of the year. Instead of asking me to lunch like she usually did, Lily asked if I'd go for a walk with her. Again, I didn't exactly know how to refuse, so I said all right. Our campus was bordered by a large patch of woodland. Lily led me into the woods and the sounds of our fellow students slowly faded away. She sat down on a log and I joined her. She started talking about how she was going to miss me over the summer. I tried placating her, but I didn't want to be there, especially because she seemed almost on the verge of tears. I think I tried to make an excuse about having plans with my girlfriend, but before I could leave, Lily chose to kiss me without warning. It was uncomfortable to say the least. I got out of there and was happy to think I wouldn't see her for a while. I came back to university after the summer, moving into a house with my friends. Without going off topic, there were some serious issues in my friend group, a lot of petty arguing, and worse. I broke up with my girlfriend around the start of that school year as well. And basically the whole mess made me recontextualize things with Lily because it suddenly didn't seem as bad. That said, I didn't want to be alone with her. We mostly talked online. She was still constantly messaging me after all. One upside of everything was that I started dating a boy. Lily was not pleased to hear that news. I think she hoped to sneak in after I broke up with my girlfriend. But as I said before, that was never going to happen. There wasn't a big gap between my breakup and this new relationship, so she must have thought she missed her chance to be with me. This is where the story gets bad. At this time, I was fairly active on Tumblr. I occasionally talked about my life and mostly reblogged photos and stuff. I was on there one day when something odd happened. One of the blogs I followed had received an ask with some phrases I recognized. It took a second to register that it was taken from my About page. That made me freeze. I read the message properly. Someone was asking this completely random person to analyze a section of text from my page, asking for their opinion on the type of person who would write it. I cannot stress how messed up it was to see people talking about me like I was a character in a book they were trying to study. The reply was basically, I don't know, sorry, but the important thing was that the question hadn't been anonymous. It linked to someone's blog. Obviously, I wanted to know who had taken such a bizarre interest in me. As far as I knew, no one in real life other than my boyfriend knew about my page. Well, no prizes for guessing who was behind it. What I found was like a shrine. She was using a fake name, but I recognized Lily all over that thing. It was this cutesy pink and red page. There were a few posts about her interests, but most of the content was focused on her primary interest, me. Most of the posts were about me. There were accounts of things I'd done recently, like he told me about such and such. He went to a nightclub recently, etc., as well as references to things from as far back as I'd known her. It was clear she had been keeping tabs on me both online and offline, gathering every scrap of information she could about my life and hoarding it here in her collection. She talked about us eating lunch together and how special our dates had been to her, as if it was anything more than acquaintances getting food after class. She talked about the time she had forcibly kissed me in the woods, but she wrote it as if it had been mutual. She quoted lyrics from my favorite song and talked about how she'd always be there for me no matter who else came into my life. Lots of references to loving me just the way he is, which answered another mystery about an anonymous love letter I'd received earlier that year with the same wording. It got worse. There were a lot of posts about my boyfriend as well. These weren't so nice. They got vicious, talking about how he didn't deserve me. He didn't know what he had. If she were with me, she'd be jealous of anyone else who came near me, so my boyfriend not being a jealous person meant he didn't love me. It was angry and hateful. I didn't like to think about the sort of person who could write so obsessively being fixated on me. One thing that didn't make sense at first was that the blog also made plenty of references to Lily's best friend, Steven. She had never mentioned this person to me. Her posts talked a lot about Steven and how great a friend he was, and how much fun they had together, how he looked out for her, etc. I was trying to work out whether this was an online friend when one specific post made it all click. She had posted a photo and captioned it with, "Steven sent this to me. He knew I would like it and I love it," or something like that. The problem was the photo was taken from my own page. I hadn't sent it to her. She took it from my page and then claimed this fictional best friend of hers shared it with her, because in her head, she'd split me into two people. In her messed up fantasy life, I was both the perfect best friend who was always looking out for her, and her soulmate who was bound to end up with her when I finally got over my sweet, kind boyfriend and all the other easy girls I hung out with that she made dozens of posts complaining about. Who was she complaining to? Oh, Lily had an audience. She asked open questions about me and her relationship with me, and got messages back from her followers, people who took what she said at face value. I saw a bunch of random people agreeing with this stalker that my boyfriend didn't deserve me, and we were bound to break up soon so I could be with Lily, the person I was clearly supposed to be with. She had this fake fan fiction version of my life up for anyone to share their opinion on, and she'd made herself out to be the hero of it all. I went maybe a month back into this page's history. I did not look at everything that was there. It was too much, so I'm not sure how long that this had been going on. I sent Lily a message confronting her about the blog. She said nothing, and I cannot stress how weird it was to have found pages and pages dedicated to me, with her talking about how she was in love with me and would make sure we ended up together, slamming my boyfriend and building a fantasy life with two different versions of me in it that she clearly believed to be real, then acting like it hadn't happened. She said nothing. She didn't address it. She just changed the subject, even after I pushed, and it was like she hadn't even registered what I said. I've never seen anything else like it. She deleted the page, of course, or at least changed the name and hid it so I never found it again. It wasn't the end, though. I wasn't going to hang out with her anymore, but we were still shoved together in classes, and she had started to actually scare me with what she might do next. I'm kind of a paranoid person. Knowing someone was obsessively keeping track of me for who knows how long freaked me out big time. The next thing she pulled was trying to seduce my boyfriend. It was an absolutely useless attempt that only made him uncomfortable. He told me about it right away. What was her plan there? Did she hope to tell me he cheated and wait for me to break up with him? Why would I want her after that? When that didn't work out for her, she tried hitting on 3 of my other friends. None of them took the bait. She ended up dating one of my former housemates for a while, but made sure to send me messages while they were together letting me know she'd rather be with me. No thanks. Lily made sure to stay in my life the whole time I was at university. There was a time when I tried to pull away from her, and she ended up starting rumors about me and damaging a career opportunity I'd put a lot of work into. I don't know what else she did behind my back, but it made me realize it was safer to let her think she was part of my life while ignoring her, rather than doing something that would cause her to get angry. After I graduated, Lily still wanted to spend time together, but I knew I didn't have to now. I made excuses about work and barely talked to her after that point. I almost entirely stopped posting on social media that I knew she knew about. Of course, she didn't give up that easily. She tried to start conversations, asked me to meet up with her, attempts I usually ignored. I didn't like to think she was still tracking me online, but she probably was. I don't know how, but she'd occasionally reference things I mentioned online somewhere she shouldn't have known about. The last time we had a real conversation, she sent me a message out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken at all in months, and we hadn't talked about anything serious in much longer than that. Thinking about that conversation still makes my skin crawl, but I'll summarize what happened. At first, she asked me some questions about how long had I known I was queer. I told her some basic stuff, the kind of thing I'd tell anyone who asked. Then she changed the subject. She started talking about how would I feel about her if she was a boy, about wanting to be a boy for me. The messages quickly became fetishistic. She went into plenty of detail about fantasies she had of the 2 of us. Again, we were not friends at this point. We'd never been especially close, at least not from my perspective, and we had barely spoken for years. I can't imagine sending messages like that to even a close friend, let alone someone who barely knows you. I tried telling her not to pull this crap with me, but she decided to change tactics. She sent photos of herself, followed by a bunch of messages, maybe 4 or 5 a minute, way too fast for me to reply before the next one arrived, basically quoting back what I'd told her about myself and my past earlier. She was telling me these things as if they had happened to her. She was role-playing as me. The worst part was that she seemed to believe it was real, that those things actually had happened to her even when she was quoting me word for word. Things I'd told her only hours before were now her life. It was like she was trying to absorb my history, to take it over, to make my life part of her. Yeah, I didn't talk to her again after that. I ignored future attempts she made to talk to me, and I eventually silently deleted her from the inactive social media, which was her only real way of contacting me. I really thought she might finally move on. A few days ago, she sent me a friend request. It's sitting there unanswered, because I know if I delete it, she'll just send another one. Lily and I met nearly 12 years ago. This story is just the highlights, and even then it's only the stuff I know about for sure. A lot happened behind my back. I know it did. So, a girl who spent 12 years obsessing over me, fetishizing me, stalking me, and harassing me, let's not meet again. The fantasy life you built for the 2 of us in your head is the only place you'll be seeing me anytime soon. It has taken me many years to tell this story out of both fear and embarrassment. I share this today as more than simply therapy for myself, but as a warning to everyone. Be careful who you meet on social media. In 2018, my ex-husband and I were at the end of a very tumultuous marriage. He and I had been polyamorous for about 3 years before I met this guy. His name was Jez. I met Jez on OkCupid. I was 28 and he was 42. We hit it off very quickly. After a few weeks of talking, I agreed to meet up with him at a restaurant close to my house. We sat and talked for a few hours before I invited him over to meet my husband. Things went very well, and they seemed to get along, so Jez and I started dating. This guy completely swept me off my feet. Jez was sweet and caring. He enthusiastically listened to every little thing on my mind, engaged and validated me. Over and over again, he absolutely revered me for my strength and wisdom. He practically worshipped me for all that I was and all I was becoming. He showered me with gifts, flowers, and random good deeds just to make me feel safe, wanted, and cared for. I had never been in a relationship that felt quite like that. It was wonderful, as though we had been looking for each other for years. After the first few weeks, he had a meltdown over my polyamorous nature. He pulled the plug because he said he was already falling for me and couldn't handle sharing me. I stood my ground and accepted this boundary and the fact that I would have to let him go. I left that night sad but confident that I had done the right thing for both of us. The next week, he sent me flowers and a card to my workplace, begging for another chance. He reassured me that he would rather try than not and end up regretting it. Even though it was scary, he wanted to take this journey with me. We continued dating and it was just as wonderful. Long nights spent awake talking, sharing, laughing, making love, and planning. We went places and did things that I had always wanted to do. Then, in the deepest, most intimate moments, when we would just sit in silence, he would grip my hand to his face in solidarity and astonishment, asking, "Where have you been all this time?" Our time together was effortless. We fit together like puzzle pieces. By August of 2018, my marriage had ended, not because of Jez, and by October, my husband had moved out. I was on a lease at the time and knew I couldn't afford the place on my own, so finding a roommate was essential. I had no support system to fall back on, nor did anyone I know need a place at the time, so Jez offered to move in. Even then I was hesitant. We had only been together for about 4 months, and I knew everything always changes when you move in with a partner. Despite my hesitation, I agreed. He was wonderful to me. How bad could it be? I was not prepared for the change that was to come. It was literally like night and day. Jez suddenly became a different person. He was extremely controlling, jealous, and lazy. Nothing like the person I thought I had met. The way he treated me progressively got worse and worse. Hanging out with friends became a burden, if not impossible, because he would blow up my phone, guilting me about leaving him alone or not involving him in some way. Yet when I tried to involve him, it was also treated as a burden, and he would huff and puff his way through even the concept of leaving space for anyone but ourselves. In December of 2018, we attended my work Christmas party. I had given him the option of whether he wanted to go or not. It was really neither here nor there for me, especially because I had already learned that he didn't do well if he felt pressured into social situations. I opened the invitation to him because he had expressed over and over how important it was for him to be involved in my social life. For the full month, he insisted that he wasn't going. I took it as him being introverted and didn't push the issue. I let him know that I would make sure he felt welcome if he decided to go, but not to feel obligated. I was surprised when he changed his mind at the last minute and insisted on going. Even more stunned when we went and he actively acted as though he did not want to be there. Everyone was incredibly welcoming and included him in the festivities and conversation. However, he practically grumbled the entire night about the whole thing, mumbling insults and critiquing every little part of the party under his breath, as though being there was absolutely awful to endure. No one seemed to notice the low whispering insults and gripes. At one point, after a couple of glasses of wine, my direct manager leaned into Jez and started praising him. She and I were very close, so she was intimately familiar with what I had gone through with my ex-husband. "I am so happy she has you," she said through wine-happy slurs. "You have been absolutely transformative for her. It's so nice to see her finally happy and appreciated." Without missing a beat, Jez grimaced at the comment and quickly snapped back, "You don't effing know me." I didn't believe my ears. It was one of those moments where time stops, and you just know you couldn't have heard that correctly. I sat brewing on it for a minute before another light-hearted interaction with Jez prompted him to suddenly snap at me through gritted teeth. "Stop it!" This triggered me and I lost it. I pulled him outside and asked what his problem was. I called out his behavior and told him if he was going to act that way, then he could just leave. If he didn't want to be there, he should have stayed home. He gave a half-hearted apology and we went back inside to finish the party. I remember the drive home that night, staring out the dark window at nothing in particular, in worried silence. I might have messed up was the only thought I had the entire drive. This all started slow, of course. First, waving me away or invalidating my experiences and ideas due to my age, saying I was dramatizing my experiences because I was young. The man who 6 months prior had validated me and my trauma to no end, now acted annoyed whenever I started a story or tried to share anything. Even trying to plan out meals for the week was treated as a violation of his time and attention. Before long, he was snapping at me over everything. If I asked how his day was or talked about mine, he would aggressively shut it down. "Why do you always ask me that? I don't want to talk shop at home." Or, "I really don't care about your work. It's work." Soon, I couldn't even bring him a plate of breakfast without being snapped at. It was as though he was testing me. When Jez and I first started dating, he flat out refused to talk about most of his exes. He wouldn't name them or discuss any issues or lessons learned. They didn't matter, he would claim. They weren't in his life for a reason. He used the same reasoning regarding my more recent exes, including my now ex-husband, making it feel like talking about them became off limits. Anytime I brought up either of our exes, he would become incredibly agitated, belittling, and overall very aggressive. I took this as both an age gap issue, as I have a tendency to dwell, as well as insecurity and a threat to the life he was trying to build. However, after he moved in and this hot-button topic had been established multiple times, he would occasionally bring up his exes, especially how they looked. More than once he told me, "I would have never dated you back in the day," and that I was lucky he lowered his standards. I didn't even know how to respond. I'd laugh it off and mentally shove it in my back pocket. Noted. He then started commenting on my looks and accusing me of catfishing him. I had stopped taking care of myself due to the isolation, and had also gained some weight, so most of my clothes no longer fit. Since Jez had also been dishonest with me about his financial situation, he was often asking for extra money, leaving me broke most of the time. A horrible tragedy happened the following summer while Jez and I were still together. I received notice that a good friend I went to art school with had died in a sudden and very tragic way. Our whole class was devastated. He was, without a doubt, the best photographer among us and one of the kindest people I had ever known. I was deeply shaken. Jez, however, was far from supportive. He shrugged it off immediately. "That's life. I guess that's what he gets for messing around." I was baffled by his lack of empathy, and later, he started interrogating me about my relationship with this friend, asking when I had last spoken to him. You don't even know this guy anymore, who cares? I broke up with Jez for the first time after he called me at work, raging. I was busy and couldn't answer right away, but when I finally did, I was met with intense anger. It was storming, and one of my dogs who has anxiety was panicking. Jez knew how to handle these situations, but instead of being understanding, he screamed at me. Why aren't you answering my calls? You answer when I call, I don't care where you are. He went on calling me a shitty girlfriend and complaining about my lack of communication while I was at work. At that point, I was done. I lost it and told him off, especially for causing problems at my job. I told him being in my life was a privilege, and if he was going to act like he hated me every day, he needed to leave. I told him to get his things and that we could arrange a time for him to come back for the rest. He flat out refused, playing the victim and claiming he had nowhere to go. How dare you make me fall in love with you? How dare you introduce me to your father and then dump me? My manager and her husband ended up following me home that evening because she was concerned for my safety and offered to let me stay with her for a few days. I will never forget the scene I walked into. It was like watching Theon Greyjoy beg for his life. My boss stood beside me watching as this 42-year-old man crawled on his knees before me, begging for mercy and communication. At one point, he wrapped his arms around my legs, crying into them. She's the love of my life, you know that, he cried to my boss. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. This was the opposite of the heartless person I had been dealing with. I shook him off, went to the back of the house, and gathered enough of my things to last a few days, as well as any valuables I could think of. It took a few days, but about a week later, Jez started blowing up my phone, apology after apology. Suddenly, he was the man I had first met, full of humility and self-awareness. He acknowledged the awful way he had treated me and sent me walls and walls of well-thought-out messages, psychoanalyzing his own behavior, where it came from, and how he needed to change. Like a dumb, desperate girl, I took him back. It didn't take long for him to guilt-trip me about the breakup. He claimed my panic had damaged his relationship with the people in my life, and it was my responsibility to fix it. Not long after this, my car broke down at a gas station near home. A kind couple parked next to me offered to help, and the man, who was a mechanic, checked under the hood and suggested what might be wrong. By this time, I had already contacted Jez, who told me to sit tight, as he'd be there soon after getting off work. The couple stayed with me to keep me company while I waited. Jez arrived about 15 minutes later, completely ignoring the couple. The man handed me a slip of paper with his name and phone number, explaining what he thought was wrong with the car. Jez cut him off and snapped, "She's fine." The woman slid into the passenger seat and I could feel the tension. The man, concerned, turned to me and asked in a low whisper, "Are you okay? You don't have to answer, but if you need anything." He gestured to the number. "Seriously." Then they drove off. I've thought about that couple countless times since. Everything went right back to how it was before, as though the breakup never happened. The same eggshells and the same belittling. If anything, it was worse because I had damaged our relationship. If I had just not been so dramatic, maybe he wouldn't have to work so hard to gain respect in my life. One night we had an argument. I don't even remember what it was about, but I had to be up early for work, so I paused the argument to get some sleep. When I lay down, I heard the TV turn on. I have a sound bar, so the volume can get loud, but Jez kept turning it up, louder and louder. far past any volume I had ever used, even for parties. The walls reverberated with the sound. Jez started laughing hysterically, as though something might be funny on TV, but he also seemed on the verge of doing something drastic. I remember lying in bed horrified. I knew things had gotten bad, but now I was scared. I got out of bed and asked him to turn it down. He scoffed and said, "I'll watch TV if I want to," and turned it up even louder. I felt like I was in a horror movie. I started crying, begging him to let me sleep. He mocked me. "Oh, poor baby is crying again. That's your card, isn't it?" Crying. The fight started again, and he followed me into the bedroom where he suddenly punched a door not 2 inches from my head. His eyes were dark, and he looked me in the eye, sending a clear, hostile message. That was a warning, and next time he wouldn't miss. I shut down and sank to the floor in a panic attack. My ex-husband had issues with violence, and Jez knew that. All our previous rentals had holes in the walls from my ex-husband's outbursts, but he never hit me or even came close. I crumpled to the ground feeling powerless and trapped. Jez kept mocking me as I panicked. Most of the argument from that night is a blur, but it ended abruptly when he threatened to put my social security number on the dark web. That's when I snapped. I blacked out and started screaming at him to get out. I felt rabid and dangerous as I demanded he leave my home. It was over and I was ending it right then. I contacted my landlord and explained the situation. Jez also contacted her, trying to transfer the lease into his name, but I was ahead of him. My landlord didn't fall for it. She personally changed my locks, gave me the contact info of a nearby police officer in case Jez showed up again, and even took half off my rent for the next month. I will forever be grateful to her for these acts of kindness. It took weeks for Jez to stop messaging me. I didn't block him because I feared he would show up at my house. I preferred daily apology videos to dealing with him on my doorstep. The love bombing and promises continued for weeks, but I ignored it. Finally, he gave up, signing off by saying he would always love me. I left him unread. The illusion was destroyed. It took me several years to pick up the pieces. If my divorce wasn't enough, this definitely made me lose trust in myself. I still don't understand what his endgame was. In one of our last conversations, I asked him, what happened to the guy I fell in love with? Jez looked me dead in the eye, smirked, and said, "That guy doesn't exist. I told you what I had to in order to get you away from that asshole husband of yours. You're just stupid and fell for it. Jez, let's not meet ever again." This happened just yesterday. To be honest, although I read this subreddit to creep myself out, I am not really posting this for you to read. I am posting it because I need to talk about it even if no one is listening. I am still scared and need to let it out. I thought this would be an appropriate place to do so. I know I probably could have handled this better and that there were things I should and should not have done, but I do not want to hear about it. I already got some of that from my mom. It does not matter what I should have done because it has already happened. I am posting because I need an outlet to express how I feel. I am a very small, weak woman, 5 feet 6 inches tall and 118 pounds. I am a university student who lives with my mom. I take my city's subway system to and from school, and I have never had any problems with it before. On Mondays and Wednesdays, I have a class that ends at 7:15 p.m. I have never been concerned about it because the route from my classroom to the train station goes through a segment of downtown that is filled with high-class hotels. It is very well lit and there is always police around. A lot of my classmates also ride the train and take the same route. But yesterday I had to go to the bathroom after class. By the time I got to the train station, all of my classmates had already left on their own trains. Part of me thinks that if I had just held it, my night would have gone so much better. I got to the train station and sat down on a bench to wait. I have these huge over-ear Bluetooth headphones, the kind that are also an accessory. Yesterday, I was just using them as earmuffs. I did not have any music playing, but these are quality headphones, so outside sound is still pretty muffled even with them off. I was sitting there with my headphones on, playing Pokemon on my 3DS, with a bald man at the other end of the bench. Some guy walked up and wanted to sit between us, so I scooted over without being asked because that is just what you do. The new guy started talking to the bald guy. I could not hear what they were saying because of the headphones. Then the new guy turned and gave me a friendly pat on the back and said something to me. I pulled my headphones off one ear because I thought he wanted something. This guy just kind of babbled at me. I could not really understand what he was saying because I do not hear very well in the first place. I don't need hearing aids, but enough that I talk loudly and a normal speaking voice sounds quiet to me. My standard thing for when this happens is to ask them to repeat themselves or just kind of smile and nod, which is what I did. Then he finally spoke up more and asked my name, holding out his hand to shake. I said my name and went to shake his hand. Instead of shaking it, he pulled it up and kissed the back. That was when I knew that things were not right. He started asking me about myself. First, he asked how old I was, then if I drank alcohol, then about my game and the progress Nintendo had made since putting it out. He went on about alcohol for a while, asking how much I drank and talking about how much he drinks. The whole time he was sitting so close and leaning over me, speaking very fast and in something between a mumble and a normal speaking voice. I was really uncomfortable, and over this guy's head, I was giving panic looks at the bald guy. I know he saw those looks. He would meet my eyes and then look away. The creepy guy asked me more stuff, about what train stop I went to and where I lived, which I avoided answering. He mentioned that he needed to get off one stop after Uptown Station, which is the station I need to get off at. For information, we were at Downtown Station. I live along the train line, and you can see my condo from Uptown Station. It is literally at the end of the road that Uptown Station is on in a T formation. Between Downtown Station and Uptown Station, there are 5 other stations. My train came and I quickly said, "Well, this is my train. Bye, sir," and got the hell away from him and onto the train. I remember fervently hoping he would not follow me. He did not follow at first, so I did not think he would be getting on the train. I sat down in a completely empty seat and put my bag on the seat next to me. The train has benches with 2 seats on each bench. If I had known that he would be getting on the train, I would have sat down next to one of the women on there and pretended that I knew her. The creepy guy got on right before the train left. Before he did, the bald guy who had sat down in front of me smiled at me and said, "Don't worry, he is a weirdo, but he is harmless." I cannot tell you how angry I am at this guy. The creepy guy may have been harmless to him, but I was terrified, and I looked to him for help multiple times throughout the train ride. This bald-headed man would look me in the eye, acknowledge my fear, and then look away and make conversation with other men on the train. Screw this guy, I hope he trips and falls face first into a cactus. Now this next part I do not really have an explanation for. I know that this was dumb, but it is like I froze up and my southern-bred manners kicked in. The guy came onto the train and started looking around for me. I froze and thought, oh no. He spotted me, walked up and said, "Hey, can I sit next to you?" I wanted to say no so badly, but I could not speak, and my body just went into autopilot and moved my bag off the seat and onto my lap. I was trapped between him and the wall of the train. His entire body was pressed up against me. There was not an inch of him that was not pressed against my side. I was frozen, facing straight forward and staring at my game. When he talked, he did it with our cheeks only an inch apart. He started mumbling and chattering at me again. I could barely understand him. He asked me about my game again, then got into weirder topics. He asked me if I listened to rap music, then congratulated me for saying no. He asked if I dated black guys, if I had a boyfriend, if I had a girlfriend. He asked if I lived alone and where I lived, which I obviously lied about. As we got closer and closer to my stop, I got more and more scared. I was terrified he would follow me home. It is a straight shot from the station to my condo. You literally cannot miss it. I was giving panic eyes to everyone in there. Men, women, out the window, anyone who would look at me. They all looked away. And the creepy guy saw me give those looks multiple times. It just confirmed to me that he had bad intentions. If a normal, albeit weird guy who was trying to make conversation with a girl saw her making panic eyes to people, he would realize something was wrong and that he was being creepy. But this guy just did not care. I do not know how I can properly express how terrified I was. It all looked so clinical and factual written down, but this felt like life and death to me. He pulled dozens of folded up papers out of his pocket and started sorting through them. He picked one and started writing on it while mumble chattering about racist women and the bald guy. Meanwhile, my stop was coming up and I was still panicking. My stop came and I stood up. He had his legs up so I could not get out. I said very forcefully, "Sir, this is my stop, I need to go." And he scrambled to get out of my way. A billion more papers, a folded up notebook, and an unopened condom packet fell out of his pockets. I got to the door, the train came to a stop, and my fears were proven true. He gathered up all his stuff and followed me out. "Remember that," he said the stop he needed was the one after the stop I get off at. I managed to text one-handed in my pocket and sent, "Help, man following Uptown Station to my mom." She did not reply. I managed to turn on my headphones and connect them to my phone, again one-handed in my pocket, and called her. She did not reply. I was nearly hyperventilating. I tried to move fast enough to lose this guy. He was dropping his collection of stuff everywhere, but he got himself organized and caught up to me before I reached the escalators. I had been continually calling my mom this whole time. The creepy guy followed me up the escalator and out the gates. At this point, I stopped. There was no way in hell I was going to go home and show this guy where I lived. He asked me which way I was going next. I sort of lied and said that I was waiting for my mom to come pick me up. He said that he would wait with me. I tried to convince him that it would be okay for him to leave, but he insisted on staying. At this point, I pulled my phone out and called my mom publicly. He leaned in super close again and said, "Oh, Penny Catherine, I know her, a good-looking lady," and starts going on about how he knows my mom and how pretty and nice she is, which is total BS. My mom is a high-class accountant who works for a massive scholarly organization, and this guy is certainly not the type of person she comes in contact with. I give up on calling my mom. He gives me the paper he had been writing on. It had, assuming it was real, his full name, email address, and 2 phone numbers. He kept saying to call him if I wanted a job. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Then he pulls out another paper and pen and hands it to me. He asks for my full name, email, and phone number. I gave him a fake number and handed it back. He said, "No, your full name too." I told him, "Oh no, I'm sorry, sir. My mama wouldn't be very happy if I gave that out." He starts trying to convince me that it would be okay. At this point, I panic and shove the paper with the fake number at him and say, "I'm sorry, sir. I have to go," and just literally run the hell away, down the stairs to the street. My mom finally calls me back. Her phone had been on silent. I was terrified and kept looking behind me to see if he was following me, because he started to when I started to run. Mom leaves the condo and runs toward the station, and we met in the middle. I've never been so relieved to see my mom. She brought me home and kept an eye out over our shoulders for the guy. I still have the paper with his supposed full name and contact info. I just feel like I need to share this story because I'm still scared. I had to go back to both those stations today, and I was terrified he would still be there. I was in fight or flight mode the whole walk to the station. But I'm still scared I'm going to encounter him again. I'm still on campus. I'm going to have to go back to those stations again today. And I'm so anxious that he'll be there. I just felt like I needed to talk about it so I wouldn't be scared anymore, you know.